From Miller Waldrop Studios, this is Campus Live.
What's up, Campus Live fans? It's Lane here in the Miller Waldrop Studios today to bring you another episode of the Guns
Blazin!
podcast, episode number 15. And as always, I'm one of your hosts today. But alongside me today is Mr. Logan Wilson. Logan, it's March. Man, how are you feeling today?
Best time of the year if you're a college basketball fan. You know, we're going to get into, the stumble that Texas Tech took last night. But we also have a big win to talk about as well. And this is the time that you want to be a part of. And Texas Tech is right in the thick of things here in March and couldn't ask for a better time.
Yeah, March is always a great month for sports. Obviously, March Madness, we got the World Baseball Classic starting here this week. Spring football around the corner as well. Actually, a few teams starting practice today, so even football kind of getting back into the thick of things as well. But first off, we just want to thank everyone for tuning in every single week, like as always, and we just want to make sure that you like and subscribe wherever you're seeing any of our content, either at the Guns Blazin podcast or at Campus Live TTU, and as well as also thanking our sponsors for the Guns Blazin podcast with Roof Masters of Lubbock. Fans, with storm season actually really only a few days away, we're predicted to have some storms this weekend. Make sure before that kicks off that if you have any roof damage or you need any house restoration needs, to go to roofmasteroflubbock.com. And also we want to thank our sponsors with JSI Services and the Exceptional Community Hospital here in Lubbock. Logan, first off, we did want to shout out, hey, we had another champion for Texas Tech sports this past weekend, the track and field team. They won their fourth consecutive indoor Big 12 championship. Just kind of speak on how much dominance this indoor track and field team has had over the past basically decade.
Yeah, we were talking about it last night when they got honored at the basketball game, and I was like, at this point, Coach Kitley is there, like, yeah, great, another Big 12 championship, but we're looking for a national championship.
Yeah.
But to be that dominant in a conference that's, they got some really talented programs. It came down to the wire in this go-around, a couple of protests. But this team is just extremely talented. He brings and reloads every single year, and they continue to just dominate the track and field world, and he is a legendary coach, which we already kind of knew that.
Yeah, it's so impressive to see what he's done, especially because ever since NIL started, he basically had 2/3 of his scholarships completely cut. So to see him still dominate with not having nearly as much resources as he used to, it's pretty amazing. But so shout out to our indoor track and field team. And then also, as we move on, we'll kind of give an outlook. We gave an outlook last week of Texas Tech basketball. Now, after this past weekend and last night, we are now 22-8. Obviously, we have our wins over Duke, Houston, Arizona. Now at Iowa State, to another big win. You arguably have four of the best wins in the country. I think it's pretty easy to say that you do have the four best wins. We'll first talk about the Iowa State game because that was the good news of the past few days or so. And really what it showed, in my opinion, was the ceiling of this team, even without JT Toppin. 6 different guys in double figures, and that's not even including Lawan Watts. He only had 5 points in this game, but he had 7 huge rebounds. So seeing 6 different guys besides really someone you'd probably consider as the third or fourth best scorer on this team was really encouraging to see. And Iowa State, they have a bigger front court than us, and I would say more talented front court now without JT out. You out-rebound them by 6. We shot 48% from 3, 58% altogether from the field. It was one of your best performances of the entire year, and I think it was your most improbable win and arguably your most important win of the year after that game, because obviously going into it, you were a 10.5-point underdog. I don't know if anyone expected really a win heading into that, but Grant McCasland does what he does. He makes his team believe that they can beat anybody even without JT. Logan, what did you think of that Iowa State game?
It was a huge win. Like you said, we saw where the committee ranked Texas Tech after losing JT Toppin. The chair saying that they needed to see something from Texas Tech to see what kind of team was going to show up. This win just solidified that your team didn't take that big of a fall off and can compete at the highest level. This team, when they play big games, they play their best basketball. We've seen it all season, and we've seen it in the tenure of Coach McCasland. I mean, him being able to, walk into Houston last year, he gets ejected, JT gets ejected, they pick up the huge win. This year, you beat Duke at Cameron North and Madison Square Garden. You beat Houston at home. You pick up the win at Arizona and at Iowa State. But this one felt different because of what you were dealing with. No JT Toppin at one of the toughest places to play, not only in the Big 12 but the entire country. In Hilton, you hand Iowa State their one loss at home, the only one this season, and it just showed that this team has the caliber and capability to beat anyone in the country. And Donovan Atwell showed that he is the best shooter in the entire country as he outplayed Milan Momcilovic in that game, who has the highest percentage on the season. But, man, this team is loaded, even without JT when they play to their full capability.
Yeah, it made you have belief, kind of like everyone had the belief back in this team because, a lot of people, including I think really any Red Raider fan, had our questions and what this team would look like versus the top competition. So seeing us go on the road in a place like Hilton, like Logan said, they were undefeated this year. They beat teams like Houston, Kansas, go on the list. And to see us go there and really a game, we won by 9. We could have won that game by 15 or more, honestly, if the refs wouldn't have tried to keep Iowa State in that game closer. But even after seeing the belief in the team, throughout the season, even with JT, after we get big wins, you've seen us versus lower competition in the Big 12 for some reason kind of fall back down to earth and play down to our competition. We play up to our competition and play down to our competition. And last night, I think, is what you saw the floor of this team without JT, because in my opinion, if JT Toppin plays in that game last night, you win that game because of how badly we got out-rebounded, especially TCU killed us with second chance opportunities. I mean, you think at the end of the game, they gave us a gift. We were talking about it when we were at the game. We were only down 4. There was about 30 seconds left. TCU, all they had to do was hold on to the ball, and they go for a layup, and we block it twice, still can't get the rebound, and they put up a layup and go back up 6. Things like that. If you had a guy like JT in there, I have no doubt JT would have had a double-double last night. Unfortunately, you got out-rebounded. You got outplayed, honestly, from the start of this game. We didn't shoot the ball well. We were in the low 30s from the three-point range. And once again, for some reason in some of these games, we cannot beat the trap in our backcourt. We had a few backcourt violations last night. We had turnovers. We had 5-second violations. And whenever you see Christian Anderson get placed in that trap off of the high ball screens, TCU was pushing him closer back to half court. It forced him to basically force a ton of really tight passes, and Christian had a bunch of turnovers last night. So unfortunately, it was not our best game. And Logan, what did you kind of think of that TCU game last night?
It was Texas Tech, like you were saying, they've had a problem with hangover games. The game after the big wins, like you talked about, it's the third time they've lost after a top 5 win. And, you look back, after Arizona, you go to Arizona State and you lose JT as well. But you were losing the entire game with JT throughout that game. You did not play well. And then you end up losing the game. Donovan Atwell misses 2 free throws at the end to tie it. One of the best free throw shooters in the entire country. Last night, you didn't shoot the ball well from 3. You had been really, really good shooting the ball all season. Obviously, Atwell still led the team in scoring. He did it a little bit more in the lane than I thought than he had in the past. He got in the lane. The floater looked good last night. But this team goes the way Christian goes, and Christian did not play well last night. He turned the ball over. He looked like he got sped up by the TCU defense. Like you said, the traps were affecting him. As he was trying to get around, he would speed up, get in the lane, and the big would step up, and he would lose the ball, make a bad pass across the floor. And the turnover is what killed him early. Then rebounding had a problem all game, but rebounding really took the forefront in the second half. Thought Texas Tech was, keeping them at bay. Yes, they got out-rebounded, but it looked a little closer in the first half. You had a 3-point lead, but in the second half you got blown off the boards. And Coach McCaslin talked about it after the game that's not going to happen again. I think that now you're going to have to see that play out. You're facing a BYU team coming up who has been one of the worst teams in the Big 12 since losing Richie Saunders. So we'll see how they are able to play there because they have some bigs that can give you some trouble.
Yeah, and even in the Iowa State game, we had 15 turnovers in that
Yeah.
game, and obviously we shot ourselves to a win in that game. But some days, when your shot isn't falling, you're gonna have to win one of these gritty games like this versus TCU. And unfortunately, when you are missing your most gritty player in JT Toppin, I thought last night we missed him in a big way. I thought that was the first time since he's been injured that we really missed him. And TCU, they're a good team. They've won 7 of 8. They have wins over Florida, Iowa State. They barely lost to Kansas and Michigan. Florida right now, even though that was in the beginning of this year, they look like they could absolutely repeat as champions. And Michigan, obviously, they're going to be a 1 seed this year too. So they're a good team and they're a physical team. And also we saw last night too, Kansas, they lost to Arizona State. Maybe that Arizona State course was a little cursed at those late night tip-offs. But, the Big 12 is tough every night, so I'm not going to, overreact to one loss, especially when we still have our whole season ahead of us. But it did suck to see us kind of, obviously show the ceiling of what we're capable of still versus Iowa State, and then the floor versus TCU, Logan.
Yeah, I think that, on paper, TCU, they lost, to New Orleans on the first day of the season. So you kind of see, you're like, damn, this team isn't great.
Yeah.
This team is a bad matchup for Texas Tech as it is made now. Texas Tech now is going to rely more on its guard play, much less in the front court. TCU, Xavier Edmonds was huge last night.
Yeah.
David Punch was really great. Rebounding the basketball and scoring in the paint. Texas Tech did not get great minutes from their bigs. A lot of minutes from Luke, got in foul trouble early. Josiah played, decently well, but you saw him get, maybe hasn't played a lot. You kind of saw that a little bit, not as many Big 12 minutes. But this team was a bad matchup. TCU, the third best rebounding team in the Big 12, and they forced the second most turnovers per percentage in the Big 12 conference. Texas Tech, when they lose games, they turn the ball over and they get out rebounded, and they did that last night in a big way. And so it was kind of a bad matchup. So, and college basketball, especially in March at the end of February, is matchup based, and so you're going to get a more favorable matchup this weekend against BYU. Yes, they have AJ DeBonsta, they got Rob Wright, but they have been playing really bad basketball, and they need AJ to carry them. And the way that Donovan Atwell was able to guard him in the first game gives you high hope on being able to repeat that. And I think that you're going to get a much better game out of guys like Josiah Mosley and Luke Bamboye because there is a lack of superior height in BYU. Yeah, Cade Bacade is a big dude, big guy, but you don't have the 7-footers that you're going to see. The David Punches, who was just a gritty physical player, and Cade Bacade is not going to extend you out. Edmonds hitting 3 threes last night was huge for TCU because Luke had to be pulled out of the paint. Then they drove and kicked, and it was a bad time for Texas Tech on defense also.
Yeah, and kind of with TCU too, I saw this stat last night I think it was on Twitter or something, but in the 4 games that they've played top 10 teams this year, they have 4 top 10 AP top 10 wins this year, which is pretty crazy. In those 4 games, they have ranked as the second best defense in the country in KenPom. So kind of in a similar way to us, TCU, it seems they play up to their competition. And obviously, like you said, they have losses versus like New Orleans and Utah. Utah has been terrible this year in the Big 12.
Notre Dame as well. Bad loss.
So seeing them lose those 3 games, it's kind of a similar way. TCU, they rise to their competition, and to me, they look like a team that's peaking right now. I would not want to play them in March Madness, especially with how big and physical they are. Like Logan said, third best rebounding team in the Big 12, and when they hit their outside shots like they did last night, they could beat anybody. So I'll give TCU a lot of credit, but man, as we kind of look ahead to BYU on Saturday, like Logan said, BYU, they are really struggling after losing Richie Saunders. Their season has really completely faltered. I mean, when we beat them, what were they? 15-1 when they started this year. Now they're 20-10. So, I mean, you do the math on that. What their record's been. I mean, obviously Richie played a few games after that, but you can't win every night with AJ having to score basically 40 points a game. And unfortunately for them, the rest of their team, they just don't have the stability and the rest of the squad. And they got destroyed last night by Cincinnati. And for Texas Tech, I think this is a really good bounce-back opportunity versus a team that's clearly limping into March. You need to go to Provo, and you need to beat the brakes off of them. And I think that hopefully as we do that, we should see Texas Tech do that on Saturday, Logan.
Yeah, BYU, like you said, struggle. We've seen it. They have not played well in the Big 12 since Richie Saunders, and since Richie Saunders, tore his ACL. They are the 167th best defense in the entire country, and in some cases that is high for what they are producing on the floor. They've given up a ton of points, and to teams that haven't scored a huge amount. We've seen Cincinnati. They're not an offensive firepower team. They play great defense, and they just put it on. BYU, it wasn't even close at any point in that game. I just think that, you're at a moment now, like you said, they're limping into March, now have probably fell from a 4 seed to probably an 8 or a 9 seed. But they have the talent. You have AJ, you have Rob Wright. Those are still two guys that have immense talent. Rob Wright put it on in Lubbock. He was the guy for them in Lubbock. And I think it's going to be a very competitive game. We went into Provo last year and beat them. So it's a place we have won. And, any road game in the Big 12 is great. One thing I wanted to touch on in the Big 12 as well, when you talked about Arizona State beating Kansas last night, our loss is now a quad 1 loss, which is huge in the seeding ranking. Now you take away a quad 2 loss and add a quad 1. I know it's still a loss, but in terms of metrics, it looks a lot better.
Yeah, and as we kind of move into this BYU game, we'll quickly give our injury report segment for this BYU game. Fans, it's time for this week's injury report presented by the Exceptional Community Hospital. And before we hop into this week's injury report on the Guns Blazin podcast, we just want to take a moment to recognize the Exceptional Community Hospital as a proud sponsor of the Guns Blazin podcast and Campus Live. And be sure to visit their 24/7 state-of-the-art hospital and ER located at 6401 Spur 327 here in Lubbock. They accept all insurances and have short ER wait times. And once again, the Exceptional Community Hospital is proud to support this week's injury report on the Guns Blazin podcast. Obviously, JT Toppin being out for the rest of the year and BYU with Richie Saunders, two guys last year that were 1 and 2 for the Big 12 Player of the Year last year. Seeing both of those guys out absolutely sucks. You never want to see guys get injured at all, but players of their caliber, Logan, it sucks to see because it hurts the Big 12 too, because BYU at the beginning of this year they were top 10 when we played them. They were still really good. And unfortunately for them, and then obviously for us losing JT, you drastically changed the ceiling of both of these teams.
Yeah, and we've seen how important that Richie Saunders has been to BYU, like we talked about the struggles, but it just shows that team was, it's all the headline is AJ DeMansa, but it sounds like Richie Saunders was the heart, and it looks like it on paper. He is what kept them together and allowed them to be the team they were. Kevin Young has had a tough time figuring out, a way around him, and, it just speaks volumes to the player that he was. Like you said, he's second place in the Big 12 Player of the Year last year. He has been he's meant everything to BYU. If anybody that talks about BYU basketball knows that Richie Saunders is the guy for them. And, JT is the same way, the heart and soul of Texas Tech basketball. I just feel like Texas Tech is a better built team overall. They don't rely nearly as much on JT by himself. Yes, his usage rate was super high, but when he comes out, they were able to switch their play style and allow them to play a different brand of basketball. So I think that both teams, like you said, just makes the Big 12, not necessarily weaker, but if you don't have the best players out there, it's hard to consider the Big 12 the best conference still, even though team-wise you would think they are.
Yeah, and as we do have a live show for our game on Saturday starting at 7 p.m. out at Golf Suites, so make sure y'all come out to that. We'll be covering all things Texas Tech versus BYU, but we will give a few keys to victory right now during the podcast. We'll obviously cover the game in full extension on Saturday, but fans, JSI Services is a proud partner of Campus Live, and they are proud to support this week's Paving the Way to Victory on the Guns Blazin podcast. And be sure to visit their website at jsiservicesllc.com to learn about their asphalt/paving services, earth and dirt works, concrete and gutter paving, crack fill, seal coating, and stripping services. And once again, thank you to JSI Services for their proud support of Campus Live and the Guns Blazin podcasts. I just have two keys for right now. Obviously, I have rebound times 3. I put it 3 times because we got killed last night. So I put rebound, and then second is obviously getting back to our normal 3-point shooting, averaging around 40%, Logan.
Yeah, I totally agree on the rebounding front. Yes, 100%. That's the number one key for them. But I think number 2 is you got to get Chris back to where he was a couple of weeks ago, playing much more confidently. He's right now second guessing himself and speeding himself up, and he is the best point guard in the Big 12 Conference. He needs to get back to that ability to shoot off the bounce. Yes, they're going to trap the crap out of him. Maybe you are put him off the ball a little bit more. Let Lawan bring the ball up a little bit. We've seen success with Lawan bringing the ball up the floor and having Chris screen for Lawan. They're not doubling Lawan.
Yeah.
It allows him to get into the lane a little bit. We saw some. He had a big assist night last night. Lawan being able to kick to shooters outside out of the threes we did make. It opens the floor up not just for Chris but Donovan Atwell as well. But Chris being able to get open looks, it's been hard to come by. But right now it seems like he's forcing a little bit too much, speeding himself up, and he just needs to take a step back and play like he had been. Even against Kansas State and Cincinnati, he had big games. The last 2 games, he's turned the ball over a lot more, and you can see it kind of mess with him psychologically in his shooting and his playmaking. So get Chris back to being the best point guard in the conference, and you will win a lot of basketball games.
Yeah, I like the point you bring up. Even though Lawan, he didn't have his best game last night either, I thought that when he did bring the ball up, besides his backcourt violation, that was bad. But whenever he did, probably the best play we ran last night was whenever Christian screened for him and he hit Jalen driving baseline, and then obviously it led Donovan Atwell to be wide open because so much attention was on Christian being the off-ball player he can be as a shooter. I think that was like right out of halftime. They ran that play and Donovan hit that big 3. But maybe that's something they got to start switching to, because clearly every team moving forward is going to double team and trap Christian off of every high ball screen. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think that obviously Grant and Coach Linder, he's one of the best offensive minds in the country. They're going to figure something out. They always do. So I have no doubt in my mind that moving forward they will hopefully figure something out, Logan.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's all you're going to see from now on. Houston was the first one to bring it to the attention, but you had JT to take some of that pressure off of Chris. Now it's Josiah Mosley trying to be that guy, and he's great, but his scoring threat is a lot lower than JT's is. I think that maybe Lawan and Jalen Petty maybe increase their usage a little more than they had been in the last couple of games.
Yeah, and that'll kind of wrap up our Texas Tech current basketball discussion. Obviously, the last regular season game is on Saturday. Once again, fans, we will be having our last regular season live show for this season's basketball team, so make sure to come out on Saturday at 7 p.m. But that'll kind of move us into football. Yes, even though it is March, spring football does start very soon. Actually, next Tuesday is sort of the kickoff ceremony for spring football for Texas Tech. And today, actually, like I said earlier, a few teams started practice today. I saw, South Carolina started practice today. So some of these teams already, even here in early March, are already starting their spring practices. Should be extremely exciting. Obviously, a really new team. Obviously, there are some returning pieces, but a lot of those key contributors on the defensive side now in the NFL draft, a few offensive contributors as well. But we're going to start hearing those, reports kind of trickle out of practice. And actually, we will be able to be there for some of the media session windows this year. So that should be awesome. We'll get some videos out for you guys, get some practice reports as well. Logan, even though it's spring football, it's great to see that we do have a little bit of football to talk about here in this next coming month or so.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time, especially coming off last season. Texas Tech football is at the top of the list for any Texas Tech, Red Raider fan. Brendan Sorsby coming in is now your new QB1. You got some threats on the outside. Micah Hudson will be a big factor this year. I know a lot of fans have been waiting for him to get his moment. This year it seems like it will be. But you got new faces on the defensive side of the football, and that's going to be the biggest question mark you're going to see here. Try to figure out here in the spring is how do you not replace, but how are you able to garner some of the production that you were able to get, because that defensive line and Jacob Rodriguez, those guys are once in a generation kind of talents that you were able to build all together, and you created one of the best defenses in the entire country. You have, in my opinion, a better offense potentially this year,
Yeah.
and a slightly weaker defense on paper. We will see what happens come, the fall, but I'm excited for Red Raider football.
Absolutely. And, speaking of the generational defense we had this past season, the Combine was this past weekend, and a lot of the Red Raiders performed really well. This was, it was kind of, besides a few other guys, probably the Ohio State guys, I mean, this was really a lot of Texas Tech talk. First day, you saw David Bailey. He had the best 40 time of any edge, running a 4.5 flat. I would not want to get in front of that guy coming off the edge. He is a monster. I don't think we expected anything less from him. He is such an amazing talent. You saw him, how athletic he was this whole entire season for Texas Tech. He basically secured himself more than likely a top 5 pick, and I cannot wait to see him at the next level, Logan.
Yeah, he's a freak athlete. That guy can do it all, and he's physically gifted. Like, he fits the mold of an NFL edge rusher. And yeah, he was great. Like you said, you heard some. The Ohio State guys got big credit, as do they are extremely talented as well. But the guys did well. Jacob Rodriguez ran a pretty good time. Some were questioning whether his athletically would he be able to show what he does on the field. He was able to run a really good time. And guys like Reggie Virgil, a good combine as well. So it's good to see the guys out there, improving their draft stock. And you talk about Lee Hunter, guys like, another guy who had big combine as well. I think it's good. It's just good for Texas Tech. Not only those guys, but the current team being able to see guys compete at that level, and you're going to see guys drafted very high this year.
Yeah, it was so satisfying to see J-Rod get his 4.57 time, because I think a lot of people were thinking he might run in the high 6s. And to see him get that time, he had the fastest shuttle time once again. He had it at the Senior Bowl as well. I was so happy for him. He basically secured himself, in my opinion, at least in the late second round at worst. I think someone's going to get him in the mid early second round. Because teams loved him in the meetings as well. He showed he has the speed. We know that the speed he plays with on the field. He has a knack for the ball. He gets turnovers every single game pretty much. So it was great to see that. It was great to see Romello Height too. He ran a really good time for the edge as well. He ran in the 4.6s. And, right now he's a projected late end second to early third round guy. Edge rushers are always a commodity, though, especially in the draft. So I think he can maybe even go higher. I could definitely see him going in the second round as well. But Lee Hunter was really the talk of the Combine, especially during the defensive tackle day. And not only did you see his athleticism on display, but the NFL Network really covered Lee's personality and how great of a character guy he is too in the locker room. In my opinion, not only is he the best defensive tackle in this draft, in my opinion, and in the opinion of Daniel Jeremiah too, I think he might be one of the top locker room guys you can draft. And I think, you could potentially see him creep in the first round. There's a lot of guys, including Daniel Jeremiah, that have him going in the first round. Many have him in the mid to late 30s, but when you're in that range, there's no doubt you could go in the first round as well, Logan.
Yeah, he's a rare talent both on and off the field. We saw it all year. Coach McGuire raved about him. I think he's a guy that, like you said, you can plug in on any team at any given time, and you will have no problems with him. Yeah, he's a great player, great guy, and yeah, I could see him going as early as probably 25, and creeping into the second round possibly.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we didn't get to see Skyler do any drills. I guess, still rehabbing that injury, making sure everything's all good with that. But he did have the second most bench press reps of any defensive tackle. I think he's going to be a later round steal for someone, absolutely. As of right now on the NFL mock draft database, he's projected as a late fourth rounder. If he wouldn't have gotten hurt, I promise you he'd be in the second or third round right now. So it was good to see him, show off his strength, because obviously we saw it in those first 6 games of the year. But to see him not be able to compete in the drills. Hopefully he'll be able to do that at his pro day here at Texas Tech. Baron Morton, he actually made quite a bit of noise. He had the fastest miles per hour wise on any throws it was like 61 and a half or something like that. So it's good to see him throw the ball around a little bit, generate some positive publicity, especially with how his season ended. And then obviously you talked about Reggie. He had a good combine. And then Caleb Douglas actually ran a 4.39 in the 40-yard dash. It was really good to see him have a good time for that as well, because I didn't know Caleb was in the 4.3s like that. So that was awesome to see him run like that, Logan.
Yeah. Another guy that is going to fall a little bit down the boards, but could be a really, really good NFL player at the next level.
Yeah. And that'll kind of shift our focus into our mailbag segment. This is something we started last episode. We really enjoyed doing this. So now we will start our second mailbag segment. Logan, we got some really good questions from our fans. We have really, honestly, a lot of talk about March Madness, some talk about other stuff, some other sports we'll touch on later. But our first question we got, who do you think is the player for Texas Tech that needs to step up the most going into March Madness, Logan?
I would have normally said Lawan Watts, but I am changing my answer. I think Luke Bamboye is the guy that has to step up the most for Texas Tech to have a run in March. With the teams that you see, the elite teams are big. They have bigs. The front court is elite. You talk about the Michigans, the Floridas, pretty much every elite team, your Duke, Arizona. Teams we've already played, and you see that they're elite in the front court. Luke has to be able to provide rim protection and rebounding. Other than that, the scoring will come and all be positive. That's all a plus. Rebounding, defense, rim protection has to be there in the tournament.
Yeah, I completely agree. I normally, like you said, would probably say Lawan. But, the way that our guards are scoring right now, Lawan is kind of just really being a playmaker and a rebounder more right now. And I think Coach McCasland probably has pushed that onto him. Like, hey, you can score your 10 points, but we really need you to be one of our best rebounders right now. And Luke Bamboye definitely, I think, is probably the one player that needs to step up the most. We saw what he's capable of versus teams like Kansas State and Iowa State, 2 games where he had double digits, he had a bunch of blocks. That's, to me, his ceiling. And whenever you see his ceiling, we win those games. You saw us obviously go on the road versus Iowa State and basically dominate them that whole game. And he played amazing in that game. But last night I think you kind of saw maybe his floor where you play a bigger physical team like TCU. Man, they kind of punked him around a little bit, especially on the offensive glass. And hopefully that's something that Coach McCasland works out. But, yeah, I completely agree with that, Logan.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's one guy.
Yeah, and as our second question, kind of different topic, different sport. But this is a sport that's going to be really cranking things up here in the next few weeks. We'll talk about the World Baseball Classic here in a second. But, Logan, we got this question. What rookies in the MLB do you have your eyes on for this season?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the 2 guys that stick out to me are both in the National League. I think Nolan McLean, you're going to see a lot of him for Team USA, potentially pitching in the final this year, according to manager Mark DeRosa. And then the other guy is Connor Griffin, the number 1 prospect in the entire major leagues. Those are 2 guys that are going to be on. McLean pitched last year, pitched extremely well. He's going to be on an extremely talented team in the Mets. And then you got a guy like Connor Griffin on a young team in the Pirates, and it's obviously headlined by Paul Skeens, so they get a lot of attention, at least when he's on the mound. 2 guys that are going to have big seasons, and, MLB, rookies are hard to come by to find really good ones, and that become good instantly, and those are the 2 guys that have the talent to be really, really good.
Yeah, I think Trey Savage for the Blue Jays. You saw the Blue Jays go on their run last year, obviously, and really him coming into the month of September, it catapulted their rotation to a completely different level. And to see him get a full season, he could be their best pitcher overall this year. It'll be really interesting to see how the Blue Jays, bounce back from that heartbreaking loss in that Game 7 versus the Dodgers. But I think Trey is savage. He actually is the favorite right now in the American League to win the AL Rookie of the Year. But I think an interesting player, though, Munetaka Murakami from Japan going to the White Sox. A lot of people thought, oh, he's just going to go to the Dodgers like Ohtani and Yamamoto. But seeing him go to the White Sox, I think, he might not win Rookie of the Year, but I think he's going to be an interesting storyline to follow. He was a guy in Japan, I mean, he would hit 30, 40 home runs every single year. To see him translate into major league pitching, I think it should be really interesting to see, Logan.
Yeah, 100%. That is going to be a key storyline, especially with the way that he hit in Japan, where it's considered the dead ball era over there, where they don't hit a lot of home runs and pitching is very, very key. So for him to hit that many home runs, power grade is definitely high.
Yep. And now to our next question, kind of something we just touched on earlier about the TCU game, but what improvements need to be made after the TCU game, Logan?
It's a tough one. It's hard to see what improvements are needed to be made because they had played extremely well before that game, but the rebounding needs to play. I think that the physicality in the front court needs to improve, their fight to rebound, at least in the front court. So I think the one improvement has to be front court performance and grit in the front court, which they hadn't had a problem with JT.
Yeah, I think it's got to absolutely be the effort on the rebounding end. I mean, that's the reason why we lost last night, to be honest. I mean, even though we didn't shoot that well, if we would have grabbed just a couple of those offensive rebound opportunities that TCU gave themselves, 3 or 4 of those led to threes that absolutely were just it was like, because we couldn't score for a long period of time in the second half, and to see them get an offensive rebound and then hit a 3, it was like, oh my gosh, it felt like even though we were down like 4, it felt like we were down 15 because we were having so much time struggling on offense. So I think rebounding has got to be really our biggest improvement moving forward without JT, but should be interesting to see. And that kind of ties us into our next question, not Texas Tech based at all, but because I think Texas Tech will go on a decent run in March. But who will be the most disappointing team in March, Logan? Maybe we could do a couple teams, maybe 2 or 3.
Okay, the most disappointing teams in March. Oh, that is going to be a tough one. I think Nebraska is going to be my number one option. We saw them get ran off the floor last night against a good UCLA team. Donovan Dent finally figuring it out. Nebraska's number one for me. And then I'm going to go with Alabama. I think Alabama has the talent to compete at the highest level, but they have been a little inconsistent for being able to be a top echelon team. They are considered a top 4 seed right now, and that's what I was basing off of, top 4 seeds. Obviously you're going to see, I think the question mentioned BYU. They already disappointed, so I feel like they are not on the list, but I think you're going to see one of the top out of the 2 seeds. You're going to see one of those teams fall early, and I wouldn't be shocked if you see an Arizona not make it to the Final Four again this year. They have a track record of not performing in March, even as a 1 seed, and they arguably look like one of the best teams in the country. But it wouldn't shock me if all 4 1 seeds again are in the Final Four. Would not shock me.
I think I completely agree with you on Nebraska. I think they might be the most obvious second round exit from they're projected as a 2 seed right now or a 3 seed. I think they're just one of those teams that they have a bunch of wins. They had a weaker non-conference schedule. The Big Ten is not a great basketball conference. They're really top heavy. I think Nebraska is one of those teams that you'll probably see bounced out in the second round, and everyone will be like, oh, it's a big upset. And then it's like, it's not really. To me, I think based off of the past 2 games that I've seen, I think this team is still really talented and good. I think that they have issues on the offensive end, though, and that's Iowa State. I think when they are not playing at home, they have big-time issues. They do get a whistle at home. I think it's pretty obvious that you can see obviously, and they do have a big win over Purdue on the road. I'm not going to discount that. But to me, Iowa State is going to struggle in a neutral site game, at least in my opinion. You saw them this past week. They got run off the floor. Obviously, Arizona is one of the best teams in the country, but to see what we did to them on their home court without JT, I think that really kind of opened my eyes and how Iowa State could be in March. Even though I do think that they still are a really good team, I think they're a team that would not surprise me to see bounce out in the second or the Sweet 16 or something like that, Logan. But it should be really interesting. I think Kansas is one of those teams as well. I think they could go to the Final Four. They could go to the championship with how much talent they have. But like you saw last night, they go on the road versus Arizona State, a team that not that great. And, hey, we lost to them, so we can't really say that much as well. But Kansas, when they are away from home in a similar fashion, they don't perform that well. And whenever you're on those neutral site courts and with how much drama that Darren Peterson has been surrounding around this team, Logan, I think that Kansas could be one of those teams as well.
Yeah, I think Kansas is a better team when Darren Peterson is off the floor.
Yeah.
I think Melvin Council makes Flory Badunga better when he is the lead guard. And right now they look like they don't know how to play with Darren Peterson, and I've said that for weeks, and then they pull off, a big-time win. They beat Houston, and all of a sudden everybody's run to the streets saying Darren Peterson's now back and Kansas is back. They're a better team when he is off the floor. Another team that sticks out to me, Purdue. Purdue, to me, is a team that could easily lose in the round of 32 and more than likely will lose in the Sweet 16, depending on path, obviously.
Yeah.
And then one team no one talks about, UConn.
Yeah,
they
I
win.
completely agree.
They win, but they don't. I mean, their big win, St. John's. St. John's does not have a true point guard, in my opinion, and they play through, Dylan Mitchell, Bryce Hopkins, and Zuby Ejiofor in the front court. But UConn's another team that hasn't been battle tested like they had in previous Dan Hurley years. But they have Dan Hurley, and he's going to get you a few calls, whether you like it or not, because of the way he acts. And they have sustained, wins in the past, so they're a little lower on my list. But I would not be shocked if they're one of those fringe 1 to 2 seeds that lose early.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of answer that here in a few questions because there's a really similar question that I might touch on UConn here in a second. But our next question is, what are you most excited for at the World Baseball Classic that starts this week, Logan?
Oh, I love World Baseball Classic.
Yeah,
everything about it. It's one of my favorite sporting events. Overall, I'm ready to see Team USA get back on top. Last year we saw the big moment, Trey Turner, or not last year. It was 2 years ago, the last World Baseball Classic. We saw Trey Turner hit the grand slam of all grand slams to beat Team Venezuela and really push them to the final against Japan. I just love when they create these big moments. The Shohei's versus Mike Trouts. Now it's probably going to be the Yamamoto versus Judge. The Soto versus Skeens. You're going to see matchups like that you don't see every day. But just seeing the combination of talent and the players finally buying in to this event as we get closer to the Olympics, where baseball will now be an event in the Olympics, I surely hope that MLB finds a way to allow players to play in it, just like the NHL allowed their players to play in the Olympics during the season. I think it just brings everybody wants to play for their country. You talk about guys like Paul Skeens brought up that as soon as he got the call, DeRosa was like, I'll give you a few days. He's like, I don't need any time. Like, I'm committed. Like, it's just cool to see guys buy in for their country, and USA all the way, man, all the way.
Yeah, after you watched the Winter Olympics and saw our hockey teams both win gold, how could you not, as the MLB, how could you not want your guys to participate in that? I mean, that was some of the best TV you'll ever see, and I'm a big hockey guy, so not seeing the NHL players in a really long time in the Olympics, it sucked it's basically a decade plus. So not seeing them perform in the Olympics, coming back, it was so electric to see that, because after the Four Nations, that was so electric to see, and we obviously lost that to Canada. To see us bounce back from that, take home the gold medal was awesome. And then for the World Baseball Classic, it's the same thing. Representing your country, we have one of the best squads, if not the best squad in this whole entire deal. I will say, even though obviously the guys in hockey, it was midseason, a lot of their bodies are built up, they're in shape. It does suck to see, guys like Tarek Skubal only going to pitch 55 pitches and then he's going home. I understand, he's probably about to get the biggest pitcher deal in the history of the MLB, but man, I would love to see you, perform for your country even longer because, like you said, a guy like Paul Skeens, who is in the same boat, yeah, he's younger, but, I mean, he's going to perform for his country as much as he can. And, you're seeing reports out there, he might pitch until like the semifinals or something like that. It would not surprise me at all, knowing the type of guy Paul Skeens is, that if we needed him in the finals, he would go in there and pitch a few innings for us.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, yeah, it sucks to see that kind of thing happen. But I understand his philosophy. Again, he is a free agent, like you said, after this season. And he talked about it, how he's not built up to throw 101 miles an hour for over 55 pitches. Now there is a weird rule in the World Baseball Classic where starters can't throw more than 65 pitches, which is an interesting rule for a national or international competition. But again, like I just pray and hope that MLB allows the players in the Olympics, because that Olympics will be incredible. Adding baseball back to the Olympics has been a long time coming. And so I think that, this is just kind of a preview, and this is always one of the best events when you get the best players to play. And this year, Team USA, the Dominican Republic, and, those two teams are stacked. Japan, as always. You're going to learn a lot of names from MPB that are going to be in the MLB in a couple of years. Yamamoto, Sasaki, they put their names on the map in the World Baseball Classic. It's just fun to watch.
Yeah. And I can, kind of tie this discussion into one of our last questions. Out of all sporting events, I saw we saw this on X, discussing how it was like the 12 to 15 major sporting events. If you had to only take 3 of them though and cut out the rest, I think it was like cut 9 and take 3. What are the 3 that you would keep? And the 9 that obviously you wouldn't mention right here.
That is one of the hardest ones ever. Man, it's so hard. March Madness, I'm keeping.
I think that's a lot for everyone.
I'm going to be a little biased. I'm keeping the Women's College World Series. The Softball World Series is electric. If you've never been, that is something that you have to experience. I was able to go last year. It's incredible. And, it's hard because I love college football, but the playoff as a event by itself sometimes doesn't show what college football is. So it's hard for me to put college football playoff in there. So I'm going to go with – oh, man, it's so hard. You're going to have to give me a moment. If you can name 2 and give me a second on my third one.
I think March Madness is a lock in this. Secondly, man, for me, I completely agree with the college football take. I love college football. It's my favorite sport. I enjoy it over the NFL by far as a product itself, but I do think the NFL playoffs are better than the college football playoffs. So I'd probably put the NFL playoffs in there. But I mean, for my third, it would be between the NHL playoffs and the MLB playoffs. That would be my. I would probably take the NHL playoffs last. I absolutely love if out of all the professional sporting events, it is so electric watching the hockey playoffs. Man, I just had one pop in my mind, like the World Cup. Like
that's what I was about to say.
The World Cup. I don't know if I could cut that. It's a really.
Are we
hard
talking?
decision.
Are we also putting in the Olympics here also? Because I love the Summer Olympics.
The
I
Olympics
love the Summer Olympics. So it's super hard for me to get rid of some of these. But the World Cup is electric. And I'm not a huge soccer guy, and I always watch the World Cup, just because you see the fans out there. It just makes it so much better. But I think I'm going to keep the Olympics, just because the Olympics allows you to get a lot. I can watch basketball, I can watch, now baseball. I can add a bunch. And the track and field is one of my favorite things to watch. So I think that's what I'm going to do. March Madness, Women's College World Series and the Olympics are my 3.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go March Madness. I think I might take out the NFL playoffs, put the World Cup in there, and then go with the NHL playoffs.
I like those. Yeah. Those I feel like that just gives you a nice around. You can put them at each time so they don't overlap. And, I like those.
Yeah. And then our last question, tying back into what we were kind of discussing earlier, we'll keep this one quick, but what is your March Madness hot take?
My March Madness hot take is Michigan falls in the Elite 8.
Wow. Yeah.
They are by far the best team in college basketball right now, in my opinion. I know that Duke beat them on a neutral floor, but that team's elite. I think something the ball doesn't bounce their way. They lose to – I'm thinking that they end up in the same – bracket as Florida. I think Florida beats them to go to the Final Four because Florida, in my opinion, is elite.
That was my hot take, is Florida goes to the national championship. I'm not going to say they win, but as of right, I think Florida, wherever they end, I think they're going to end up actually taking that last number 1 overall seed. I think they're going to win the SEC championship and do all that. But I think Florida ends up as the last number 1 seed, and I think that they win their region, and I think they beat whoever they play. I'll say Final Four or for Florida. I think that's my hot take.
And I totally agree. I think Florida, the way they're playing right now in their guard play, they are like, I would not be if you told me Florida was the best team in the country right now, I would not push back at all because they are playing. I mean, you score 100 in 3 straight games, like that is something. And you hold your opponents to 70 points. Good luck. Good luck beating that front court. And the fact that that same front court we were 3 minutes away from defeating last year to advance to the Final Four and potentially have won the national championship. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have brought that up.
The Florida game will always
that is on the same caliber to me as the Virginia game, and I know Virginia was a national championship, but that game felt like the national championship.
I still, to this day, have not watched the highlights from that Florida game.
I never will.
I never will.
Can't.
Yeah, as we kind of move on from our mailbag segment, that was a lot of fun. We'll definitely keep doing that every single episode. But kind of staying on the topic of the tournament, the Big 12 women's basketball tournament actually starts today, and it was really great to see that yesterday 2 Red Raiders, one in Snuda Collins winning the 6th player of the year in the whole entire Big 12. That was absolutely great to see, Logan. She's had an amazing season, one of the best scorers in the whole entire country at the guard position. And we also had another Red Raider honored yesterday, too.
Big 12 Coach of the Year, Krista Gerlich. What a huge year that she had in the Lady Raiders. What she was able to do with this roster is nothing short of elite. That this is a masterclass of coaching, in my opinion. You know, what kind of circles back is, you know, the Aaliyah Chavez situation kind of brought up some questions in the Lubbock community about what this team would be, you know, because it seemed like she didn't buy in. For what they were able to do and the way that they were able to start the season undefeated, you know, they take a loss, you know, 2 losses in a row, and then they're able to bounce back and pick up the huge Baylor win at home. You beat TCU. Like, games like that where, you know, it's just solidified the coaching effort that she had, and she was absolutely amazing this year. Congratulations to both of them.
Yeah, and I think I might have misspoke on the Big 12 tournament. Actually, for them, it starts today, but for Texas Tech, it starts tomorrow. We'll actually have a post on the Campus Live TTU social platforms later today on what the bracket looks like initially for Texas Tech in this tournament. They will play the winner of Kansas State or Cincinnati. They actually have a pretty good path, I think. You know, they would potentially play TCU in the semifinals, a team that you've already beaten this year. TCU, they're hot right now, though, so that would be a really tough game. But if you could somehow win that, man, if you end up in that championship game, that's where you want to be at. So really excited to see our girls perform this year, and that should be exciting, Logan.
Yeah, good luck to them, and good luck in March. You know, being back in the tournament is great for this program.
Yeah. And what we kind of wanted to finish off on, the NFL free agency and the trades and stuff is kind of really starting to kick off. We'll probably have a much longer segment on this, but to kind of intro it in over the next few weeks, on our next few episodes, we'll definitely be talking about this more. But me and Logan, unfortunately, you know, we are Cowboys fans. So what we wanted to kind of do was look ahead into free agency and a little bit of the draft here quickly. Today, we actually, right before we started recording, even though this wasn't free agency related, you saw Kansas City Chiefs star cornerback, one of the best corners in the NFL, Trent McDuffie, traded to the Los Angeles Rams for a first-round pick. The Chiefs now with two first-round picks. What's kind of some of your reaction on that trade, Logan?
It's interesting because the Chiefs they've had a knack for trading away stars before their value decreases, which is a great thing to have. I just feel like the Chiefs we saw last year, they got a lot of holes on both sides of the ball. Now with the aging players they have on both sides, the defense needed more, and now you take away their best defensive player outside of Chris Jones. Now we kind of see where they're trying to go with these picks. Do they use that to trade for another guy? Do you trade this pick for, and try to get a Max Crosby on the edge, or get a back-end guy like potentially Kyle Hamilton? Rumors spilling that he may be on the block with the new head coach coming in. I don't know. I think it's a very interesting trade, and, LA just now gets even better as they were really good last year, and in my opinion, were my Super Bowl picks.
Yeah. So as the Cowboys kind of look ahead towards free agency, I know, call me a homer, but I'm not.
It feels different this year, Lane.
I think this year actually could be different. With the hiring of Christian Parker as a defensive coordinator, seems Jerry Jones has kind of given Brian Schottenheimer the reins to make that hire. And heading into free agency, they have now cleared up over close to $130 million in cap space, restructuring contracts for players like Dak, CeeDee, Tyler Smith. You go down the list. They've restructured about 7 players. Now they speculate that they will have in the top 5 most available funds for free agents in this free agency class. Out of the linebacker position, safety position, nickel position, or edge position, because obviously they're going to sign players on the defense. Offense is fine. They have one of the best offenses in the NFL. Who is someone at one of those 4 positions, Logan, that you could see the Cowboys signing?
If we're going to free agency, they've been heavily linked to Nakobe Dean, Devin Lloyd. I think Nakobe Dean coming in with Christian Parker will be huge. The linebackers need to be shored up first, in my opinion, and then you can kind of pick and choose how to fill in the other spots. I think that one is going to be really interesting is how they handle the Aubrey situation. Brandon Aubrey is going to be extremely there. He's expected to be the highest paid kicker in the league, specialist in the league, but there's a second-round tender on him if he does sign somewhere else. Dallas will get a second-round compensation pick, which could be used for Jacob Rodriguez, in my opinion. That's my mock draft.
I mean,
I wouldn't mind it because every kicker can kick now.
Yeah, I mean, If Aubrey really is wanting like $10 million for a kicker, I'm sorry, we can sign. As much as I love Brandon Aubrey, we could go sign someone else, and we will take that.
I'll bring back Jadeveon Clowney, man. Yeah, bro was okay last year.
I completely agree with Nakobe Dean. I think you can sign him. It's projected anywhere from 3 years to 45 to 50 million. I think that would be a great signing. Devin Lloyd as well. I think that would be a phenomenal sign. We just need bodies at linebacker. The linebackers were so bad last year. I mean,
Logan Wilson was awful, and it's not me, I promise.
Really, the only guy that has upside is obviously DeMarvion Overshown, and he has been battling injuries his first 2 years in the league. So we need someone else besides him. So signing a guy like Nakobe Dean or Devin Lloyd would be great. I think signing another veteran edge to shore up that room, like bringing back Clowney. He was really good last year, or maybe trading that 20th pick for Max Crosby.
That's what I was about to say.
I would love to see that. I know, and if you could flip the Micah picks basically into Kenny Clark, Quinnen Williams, and Max Crosby, you win that trade.
I feel like right now you might be winning.
Yeah.
With the way that you have been able to solidify your defensive line with those picks. Now, one thing I will say is, I think that's a draft night trade, because if the way that reports are saying, it is potential that Ruben Bain falls to 12 with he did not test well, physically. And another report is Caleb Downs now with a torn meniscus potentially. Does
would
he
still
fall to
take him.
12? I will take him at 12. He could have a torn ACL right now, and I take him at 12.
Yeah.
That's how good that guy is. But I think Max Crosby is perfect. Dallas native, went to high school in Dallas. That guy would fit perfectly in Christian Parker's system, and that guy has a motor that Dallas needs. Give me Max Crosby right now, Jerry.
Yeah.
Listen to the podcast,
yeah.
Jerry.
I think, it's going to be really interesting to see. I think it's going to – obviously they're going to sign – I think they are going to attack the linebacker position in free agency. I think you're going to see us sign a guy that you normally definitely would not see us go after. I think you're going to see us go sign actually some good players.
At what point in time have you ever seen Jerry re-sign his player before free agency opens? And Javonte Williams is already re-signed.
Yeah, and it was a great deal too. Yeah.
He doesn't do that. He doesn't restructure very often, and now he's got all this money. It seems like he's in a different mindset, and maybe he is. I say it every year, and I'm not going to say that this is our year, but it does feel a little different.
Yeah, and I think that they are going to try to address the cornerback position in the draft or the safety position. I think that even a guy at 20, if you were to keep that, the safety position we desperately need. I think if Caleb Downs does end up getting picked at 12, if you, for some reason, or if you went, edge, or if you went whatever else, a guy at 20 and Dylan Thieneman, I think would be a phenomenal pick at safety. He tested off the charts this past week. Not that the combine's everything, but this is a legit 4-3 player. He was the best safety in the whole entire country this past year besides Caleb Downs in college football. I think he would be a phenomenal player in Dallas, and it should be really interesting to see how it all plays out, Logan. I'm actually, excited in the offseason for once, though.
Yeah.
We'll see, though.
It feels different.
Yeah. And kind of lastly, what we wanted to touch on once again, fans, we do have a show on Saturday. Make sure to please come out at 7 p.m. at Golf Suites. We're going to be covering all things Texas Tech and BYU. It's the last regular season game for the Red Raiders. Hopefully they close it out with a victory and would finish the year 23-8. But once again, if you want to come out, know all things Texas Tech and BYU. And also we'll be discussing some other games going on Saturday. Duke and North Carolina play on Saturday as well. Logan, you got anything for the show on Saturday?
No, it should be fun. Y'all, I haven't been able to make a show in a while. Won't make this one either, but it's a great time. Come out and join. They got everything you need to know. It's a great time. Come out, enjoy Golf Suites, play some golf, watch some Texas Tech basketball as we hopefully get a road win.
Yeah. And that'll kind of wrap things up here in the Miller Waldrop Studios. Once again, thank you, fans, tuning in. Make sure to follow, like, share, and subscribe wherever you are seeing our content. It helps us out, helps basically all of our content be pumped out more, and it helps us generate more content for you guys every single week. And as well as thanking all of our sponsors for their continued support of Campus Live and the Guns Blazin podcast. And lastly, remember that Campus Live is always your one-stop news source for all things Lubbock and Texas Tech. Wreck 'em.
From Miller Waldrop Studios, this is Campus Live.